Hey there, Stampers. Happy Friday. Welcome to this week's live. My name is Sherry Roth. I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Alberta, Canada, and I'm excited to be here. I've got a fun project to share with you today. Now, over on my blog, or even here on YouTube, oh, hang on here. Let me mute my computer. Okay, there we go. Um, One Sheet Wonders are hugely popular. They're some of my most watched videos, my most visited blog posts. So I thought I would do a little twist on a One Sheet Wonder today. So I am doing a One Sheet Wonder, but we're not going to make a card. Well, I guess it could be used as a card. I'm calling it a folio. So I've got a fun project. All right, and we will be using Stampin' Up's, what is this suite called? This is called the Floral Charm Suite. It is an online exclusive suite. It has a stamp set, a die set. It's got some DSP and it's got some gems, and I believe there's some yes, there's some ribbon as well. So I'm going to share a little bit about those products first before we jump right in. Um, and if you don't have these products, I mean, if you've got 12 by 12 pattern paper in your stash, double-sided pattern paper, grab a piece of that and you can craft along with me. All right. Okay. So this bundle. Now if you are familiar with me, I don't use a lot of flowers, but I do love this simple flower design. It's so pretty, and I was out in Hinton with some friends. Um, I just got back yesterday, and we spent a few days crafting together, and I used this a ton and created some fun projects. So over the next week and a bit, week and a half, 2 weeks, I will have lots to share with you using this beautiful collection. All right, so there's that, and then there's this fun DSP, which is super florally for me. I absolutely love this pattern. This is the pattern we're going to be using today. So one side is florally, and then the other side is it's got muted tone on tone patterns. So this one happens to be leaves. This one is flowers, and then there's that, and then this one, and this one. So the B sides of these papers are definitely great for scrapbooking. And then these floral sides are great for, well, they're great for scrapbooking or card making as well, just in maybe in smaller amounts. This one's really pretty too. I like this one. Blackberry Bliss on that side, and then we've got a navy floral, and this one's really pretty as well. All right. So we are going to use this piece. So if you want to make this project, you'll want a piece of 12 by 12 double-sided pattern paper, and it is helpful if it's not directional, if both sides are not directional. Okay. Um, and then these gems are also part of the collection. So there's Petal Pink, Berry Burst, and Night of Navy. These are called the Charming Shimmer Faceted Dots. And then there's this fun Petal Pink braided trim, which we're going to use as well. Okay, so those are the main products. I am going to throw in a couple other products as we go, but that's the main collection. All right, so we are going to take this and we are going to use our paper trimmer and we're going to cut and score. So this is actually a pretty simple folio. I'm going to share another alternate as well with a slight modification depending on how you want to use it. And I'll give you some suggestions on how you can use it as well. All right, so this pattern isn't really directional. It doesn't really matter. And you know what? I did not figure out how to do this if it is directional. I guess actually um, if your pattern paper is directional, so this one I guess could be directional because the leaves are all going in the same direction. So if it is directional, then put it like this. So with your pattern the right way, okay? All right, and you know what? I'm going to score on this side just because I think it'll be easier to see on this side than the floral side. And we are going to we're going to start at 1 1/4. I don't want to look at that. I want to look at my other notes. Okay, 1 1/4. So this is the top of my pattern paper, and I'm going to score, not cut. So we're going to score at 1 1/4. And then we're going to move it to 1.5. And I will have this cutting guide and all the measurements and everything up in today's blog post a little bit later today. So don't feel like you need to scramble to write this down. Okay, so 1.25, 1.5, and then we're going to slide it over to 5 inches, and then 5 1/8, and then all the way down to 8.5, and then 8 5/8. Okay. And then we're going to rotate it. Doesn't really matter which way you rotate it. You just want a quarter of a turn. You're going to score it at 3 inches. And then you can either slide it down and score it at 9 inches, or you can do a rotate it and score it at 3 inches. Okay. So I'll show you in just a sec here. Let me score. So you want 3 inches from both ends. All right. I prefer to do, rather than 3 and then 9, I like to do 3 and 3, because that way I know that these two are going to be exactly right. They're going to be the same. Okay. So now we can take this away, and we're going to fold along our score lines because it's a little bit easier to see if we fold along our score lines. I'm going to fold this way because I want this pattern on the outside. So I'm going to fold this way. I'm going to use my bone folder, make my fold nice and crisp. We're just going to keep folding. So now these two and these two are really close together. So you do need to fold on both of them. So I usually just take my fingers and fold first, use my bone folder, make it nice and crisp. And then this one can be a little bit tricky, but you just kind of pinch it. It's like it's a 1/8 of an inch spine on this side, so it can be tricky to fold here. All right, I think we've got it. So I'll just pinch that, and then I can use my bold folder, make it nice and crisp. And then we've got these two. So that first one isn't really an issue. You can usually get that one pretty good. And then second one, pinch that over. Good morning, Bonnie. Good morning, Stu. Oh, you're in Jasper. Nice. I just got back from Hinton. Beautiful weekend to be in Jasper. Good morning, Joan from Minnesota. Welcome, welcome. All right, so we've done all of them going that way. Now we're going to take them and fold these two score lines going this way and this way. Okay, so we've folded along all of our score lines. Now we are going to cut. Okay, so what you want is you've got a 3 inch, I think that's 3 inches, a little bit more than 3 inches. You've got a wider flap here and a narrower flap here. You want your narrower flap on your left-hand side for this step, okay? Because we're going to cut out a portion, some of these little blocks, and it's easier if you have it facing the same way as I have it facing. So the narrow flap on the left-hand side, okay? And we are going to trim out. Okay, so we've got our narrow flap, and then there's two score lines, and then there's two more score lines. So this fourth score line in, we're going to snip up, and then we're going to cut it right off. Okay. Oh, that is not very straight. Okay. So narrow flap is still over here. You're not going to throw these away. We're going to use these. Remember, this is a one sheet wonder, so we use pretty much all of our little bits. All right, and then we're going to take, so we've got our narrow flap over here. We're going to take and we're going to cut. Let me just make sure that I'm in camera here. Okay, we're going to cut this one. So from the right-hand side, you've got two score lines. So you're going to cut along that second score line from the right. And then we're going to cut this piece up. And again, we're going to save that. Okay, and again, we've got our narrow flap on our left. So now what we're going to do is we're going to rotate it. So now our narrow flap is on the bottom, and we're going to cut this bit right here up to that second score line, and then cut that piece out. Okay, and again, we're going to save that. Okay, and now what we have to do, now we've got our narrow score line, our narrow bit there on the right-hand side. Now these two little narrow strips where the two score lines are, you just want to cut out that narrow little strip. We don't need that. So we're going to snip up to that 3-inch score line, snip that, and then we're going to cut this piece out. And then we're going to do the same. This is garbage. And then we're going to do the same thing right here. So we're going to snip up this score line. Snip up this one. And then snip this piece out. And I prefer to do this with longer bladed scissors. That's why I'm using these. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. All right. We're going to toss these away. We can get rid of, actually, we're going to keep these scissors. Okay, so now what you can do is if you fold these up, just make sure that this is not interfering with your fold. If it is, then what you can do is you can take these flaps and you can cut them at just a little bit of an angle. So wider up here and narrower down here. I try to make sure that I cut to the right of my or like just outside of my score lines so that they don't interfere. So I don't think I need to do that, but I can always adjust as needed. All right. Now with this flap, this is going to be our fold over flap. So there's a couple things that you can do with this. You can either um, round the corners, or what I like to do is I like to take my snips and I'm just going to angle cut them just a little bit. So I'm going about an eighth of an inch to the left of that corner, and I'm just going to angle cut it. And I think I angle cut it too high. You want to angle cut it just to that first score line. I did to the second score line. I'm going to repeat that on this, but you don't want to do that. You want to cut it to your first score line. Learn from my mistakes. All right. Okay. Okay, so now what we're going to do, now we've got our narrow flap on the right-hand side. Okay. And we are going to take a circle punch or any punch. It doesn't matter what punch you use. I'm going to use my 1 1/4 inch, or sorry, 1 1/2 inch circle punch. And I'm going to notch this panel. So this first one from the right. So I'm just going to find the center and just create a little notch. And then I'm going to skip this one and I'm going to notch this one. All right. Okay, so now this is the base of our little album or our little folio. And these two pockets, these two we're going to fold up to create pockets. So this is where, before you do this next step, you want to make sure that this pocket does not interfere with this score line. Make sure that it folds nicely. Okay. And that one appears to be good, and this one appears to be good. Okay. And if it does, oh, see, this one is interfering with this score line. So this is where I will take this piece and I am just going to go like a sliver, like it's probably about a 16th of an inch, just a tiny little bit at the top. And I'm just going to do a very gradual angle cut all the way to the bottom. And that is just going to take some of that bulk away so that your project will fold nicely. Okay. So now what we're going to do on these two flaps is we are going to add some adhesive. And I like to do my pockets with multi-purpose glue because I can make a nice large pocket. So I'm just going to take my multi-purpose glue and do a narrow bead down there and down there and fold that up. And that is going to be one of my pockets. And then, you know what, let's set that on there. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this one. So on the two pockets that are notched, this is what you're going to do, or the two flaps that are notched. We're turning those into pockets. And you can see I put it along the edge, but not right at the edge. Because it's a liquid glue, it is going to seep out a little bit. And I don't want it to seep out beyond the DSP. So I do leave it a little bit of room so that it will spread, but not come out the sides of my pocket. Okay, so there we've got our two pockets. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we are going to fold this up and this up. And I'm just going to make sure that those are folded nicely. And we're going to do something to these two panels. So I have taken a half-inch circle punch. So this is something that we carried long, long ago, and I very rarely get rid of my circle punches because they are just so handy. And I've gone ahead and I've punched two circles from some pretty peacock cardstock, which is the color of this cardstock. So you just want to punch it out of a color that coordinates with whatever pattern paper you're using. And you want two of those. And we are going to, okay, I'm looking for my Stampin' Pierce mat here. Okay, so I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Pierce mat and I'm going to slide it under this panel. And I'm going to position this on here, grab my paper piercing tool. And I just want it kind of in the center and about a quarter of an inch up from the bottom of this flap. I'm going to find the center of my circle and punch a hole. And then I'm going to take a brad and stick a brad through. So you don't want to adhere this circle. You want to, not with glue anyways, you're going to adhere it with a brad because we're going to create a fun little closure. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the position of that circle and I want to line this up so it's underneath. So right about there, I'll open that and then I'm going to repeat that process on this side. So I'll grab my paper piercing tool, find the center, poke that through, and then grab a second brad. And then just spread that back. And you don't want to open the or spread the legs of the brads too tightly. You want it to be loose. You want there to be some give to these circles. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of this ribbon, and this ribbon actually separates beautifully. So you can separate it. It's petal pink, which is one of my favorite colors. I love petal pink. I'm not a huge pink pet person, but I love this color. Um, so cut about, I don't know, maybe about 8 inches, and then pull one of these fibers, and I've got some left over from my project, so I'm not going to go through and do it, but you get all these great fibers. So I'm going to take one of these, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to wrap it around and tie a knot because we want to adhere it on this one side. I'm going to make sure that that knot slides right underneath. So we're creating kind of like a those old inter-office envelopes. I'm probably dating myself um, talking about these, but where they had the string closure. So I just tied a knot, and then I'm going to take this, figure out where I want it positioned, and I'm just going to wrap it around in a figure eight. And this is probably a little long. I probably don't need it that long, so I'll just trim this a little bit. And there we go. So we've got that closed, and this is what it's going to look like. Okay, so it's going to open like this, and then like this, and then like this. And then this opens up like that. Isn't that fun? So that is the base of our folio. And now we're going to decorate it and figure out what we're going to put inside. So I'm going to set this aside for now. And we are going to bring in, let's see here, we're going to bring in a piece of white cardstock so that we can do some stamping. And I'm going to use my Memento ink because I want to color using blends. So I'm going to take this beautiful floral image and stamp it down here. And then I'm going to also take this smaller floral image and stamp it. Okay. And then we'll set these aside. We will be doing a little bit more stamping in a bit. Okay. And then we're going to color it in. Now, I'm not going to do a ton of coloring. I've got some colored and die cut just to speed things up, but I do want to show you how I colored them in. So I used dark old olive. You can also use mossy meadow. Mossy meadow is the green that's in this, but I find that there's not enough variation in the color in mossy meadow, or in at least in mine. They're too similar, so I prefer to use old olive. So I just took a little bit of dark old olive, and then I'm filling in the leaf. You can leave a little bit of white space as well if you want with some light. So I'll do one more leaf here to show you. So I'm using the dark, kind of going up the center and just a little bit at the base. And I would use this, but this is kind of frayed and it's a little bit dried out. I just ordered another set of old olive blends. This time I'm going to leave a little bit of white. Okay, so that's how I colored the leaves. And then what I did for the flowers is I added a little bit of light peach pie. And I kind of went just kind of around, like not even very carefully. So kind of like that. And then I took some light petal pink, or sorry, this is dark petal pink. And then I added some dark petal pink. Fill that in a little bit more, leaving some white space. So I didn't fill in the whole thing. And then I filled in a little bit more using some light petal pink. My light petal pink died on my trip, so ended up using it all up. So I can't add any light. So I'm just going to keep filling in with the dark petal pink, but you can have a bit more variation in your shades when you use multiple colors or multiple shades of the same color. Okay, that's pretty good. All right, and then I just repeated that with the other flowers. On this flower, I did color the center with some dark lemon lolly. And then there is a coordinating die that will die cut them. And this is what they will look like when you die cut them. Is that pretty? They're so pretty. I love these flowers. Okay, I'm going to set this aside. So we've got our two flowers there. The other thing that I've done is I've taken the two leaf dies that are in the die set. Let me grab that. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. Okay, so the Charming Day dies. So this leaf is that, and this leaf here is that. So I cut that out of some Mossy Meadow cardstock. So we want that. And then I've also die cut two rectangles. Now these are from the textured note dies. And I die cut the one, two, three, fourth largest and third largest. So the third and fourth largest, and these are going to layer, and then this is going to go on top because we are going to create a little bit of a belly band, which I just realized I forgot to pull out the cardstock for the belly band. Okay, so we'll set that aside. Okay, actually, you know what? We're going to go ahead and build this now. So I'm going to take some dimensionals, and we're going to adhere them to the back of here. Be generous because these are mini dimensionals. This is a relatively large space that we're working with. Peel off these backings. And then this is going to go in the center. I love layering these rectangle dies. They look so nice when you pop them up and layer them because each die has a different pattern. They just look so sharp. Okay, then we're going to take this and some of these fibers that we separated, we're going to take some of these and we're going to add them to the back of this. So my flower is actually going to go like this, and I want my figure eight to kind of go like this. So I'm going to flip this over, and I like to use seal adhesive for this. I'm going to kind of do that, add a little bit of seal, and then I'm just going to take one of these fibers, and we'll probably use a couple of them because they are a little bit shorter. Okay, let's just make sure that this is going in the right. Yeah, that's the way I want it. All right, we'll grab another one. And so I'm going to vary the size. So this one is a little bit smaller here. So I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger. And then this one's bigger on this side. So this one I'll make smaller. Okay. And then we're going to use dimensionals to adhere this. And I'm going to put some dimensionals over top of some of these fibers just to make sure that they stay put. And then we'll add, even the back of this flower looks pretty with the bleeding through of the blends. And again, I'm going to be pretty generous with this. With these dimensionals, they're just so small. I probably should have grabbed a full-size package. Off the backing of these. So you could use this little folio. You could tack a gift card in. You could add a bookmark and some page flags, which I'll show you in a little bit. You could add, um, some tags, handmade tags, if you wanted, use it as a little thank you gift or a birthday gift. There's lots of options. Just any little thing that you want to include in there would be super cute. All right, we're gonna add some gems. I'm gonna use the petal pink ones. And we'll pop one down here and a couple up here. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh, Sharon said that they still use interoffice envelopes where she works. That's funny. Okay, I'm gonna be off camera for just a second. I gotta grab some pretty peacock cardstock so that I can do my belly band. Okay, let's see. Um, enough? Yeah, that'll be enough. Okay. All right. So I want to cut it a little bit narrower. I just want like a 1 inch belly band. And this is it's probably 8.5. I'll measure it just to make sure. Yeah, it's 8.5 inches. Actually, I think before we do our belly band, we're going to set this aside because I want to stuff it so that I can wrap my belly band around once once it's done. And I just realized that I wanted to sponge all of this. So I wanted to add some ink blending on here, and I didn't do that. So let's do that now. I'm going to grab a scrap piece of paper, and we're going to use some pecan pie. There is kind of like shades of, it's almost pecan pie or maybe Cajun craze that's in here. And we'll use a blending brush. And I like to tap off first on a scrap piece of paper, and then in a circular motion, just go around. And this just kind of gives it a little bit of a vintagey look, just softens that white. It's so subtle, especially on camera. I don't know how well it's showing up on camera, but in person, I just love the feel of it. It just looks so cool. All right, and we're gonna go all the way around. Do this side. Whoops. Okay, and now we want to do the folds. So fold that bit in and this bit and this bit and this pocket. And we can fold this back and do this. We can do this up top. Okay, and this one, we're almost done here. Fold that back. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to leave that out because that'll remind me to do the rest. All right. Okay, so there's our folio. Here is the stuff for our belly band. We're going to set all of this aside for now, and we'll keep this handy. We're going to need this. I've got a bunch of other little pieces here because we're going to do several things. And I'm going to show you a few different combinations of things. All right, so first up, I just need to open up my sample just as a reminder of what I'm doing here. Okay, and my twine is, there we go. Okay, all right. So we've got a piece that measures, and again, don't worry about these measurements. I just want to make sure I'm using the right piece because there's a few that are very close. So 3 inches by 5 and 5/8. Okay, so this is the right one. This is going to be for our center panel. And then we've got a piece of petal pink cardstock, and we're going to take one of these little strips and we're going to cut it down, because remember it's got this fold. Actually, you know what? We could just fold this over and that way we're not cutting it off. We're going to do that and we don't have to trim it. Okay, but we want to sponge first. So I'm just going to use pecan pie and just go around that bottom edge and then here on this piece, and then fold this over and do the top. Okay, set it aside. And then this is going to get adhered to the back so that we just see just a little bit of this petal pink peeking out underneath here. So about an eighth of an inch, like that. And then we'll add some adhesive to the back of this. And this is going to go on here. So I'm going to line it up with that score line just so that I can just fold that over. And then it saved having to cut it down. And then we'll add a little bit of adhesive to the back of this. Seal that flap down. Okay, and then we'll bring in our folio, and this is going to go on this center panel. So I'll add some adhesive to the back. Oh, you know what? I forgot. I forgot to sponge this white piece. You know what? We'll do it afterwards. Boy, even leaving that pumpkin pie ink out, still forgot to sponge it. Go around the edges just a little bit. Okay, so there is our center panel. So we can go ahead and close this up. All right, next up, we're going to work on a little tag. So I'll set that aside again. So we're going to bring in this, and we want to use this large stamp. So I want to clean it because I want to use it in some petal pink ink. And I'm going to bring my scrap paper back. Okay, and my petal pink is here. We're going to stamp this in a couple spots. Take this and we're going to pop it right here in the corner. Ink it up again. Pop it in this corner. All right. And then we're going to trim this so that it looks like a tag. So I'm going to take my snips and I don't measure. You can measure, but I'm just going to trim that first side and then take this piece that was trimmed off, flip it over, line it up, and then trim this side. And you'll get, it's not going to be perfect, but it's pretty close. All right. And then before we do anything else, we're going to sponge or ink blend. So I'm just going to go around the edges. Okay, and then I'm going to use this piece and I'm going to just need to check my measurements here. Okay, and then on this larger piece, there is a piece that kind of folds over here. We're going to cut that off because we're going to use that. So remember, we're doing a one sheet wonder, so which the whole point of a one sheet wonder is to use up most of your pieces. So I just cut it off at the score line. So this will end up being about 1.25 inches. And that kind of frayed the edges there. Let's just trim this up, make it look a little bit better. We'll sponge around the edges on this. And it looks like I've got a little piece here. Trim that. All right. And then those two pieces are going to get adhered together. And I'm going to, this time, I'm not going to put this underneath. I'm going to put this on top. And this is a little bit long. So let's put this on here first. And okay, and what I want to do is I don't want to add adhesive all the way under here because I want it to be kind of like a pocket. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of hold my finger right here to give me the positioning of my glue. And I'm going to put a narrow bead of glue right down here and right down here. And then we'll position this about in the center of your tag. Okay, like that. And then we can trim off this excess. And then we'll just, since we trimmed off that ink blended part, we're going to do some ink blending on here, which is super subtle on this darker color, but it is noticeable, especially in person. Okay, and then this piece can get adhesive all across the back because it's going to go on top here so that we just see a little bit of that pattern peeking out. And if it hangs off the edge, you can trim that. Okay, now we're going to take a small little piece, and I'm just going to take my 1/2 inch circle punch, and I'm just going to go in the corner here because I want to save some of this because we need to do something with that piece. So I'm just going to use a little bit from the corner and add a little bit of glue to the back of this. This is going to go in the center here. And then I'm going to take a pencil and mark the center. That just helps line it up a little bit easier because when I use this punch, it's harder to see to find the center. This is just a 1/8 inch circle punch. Then we're going to grab another one of these fibers and I'm going to fold it in half twice and then pinch that together, feed it through the hole, and then feed these pieces through. And then I'll have a loop up here, so I'm going to trim that loop. Okay, there we go. We've got that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my folio and I'm going to slide this in. Actually, I should show you how this is meant to work. Okay, so this is meant to be like a little gift card holder. So if you have a gift card, you can kind of tuck it underneath here like that. And then that can slide in here like this. So you'll want to do that. And then we're going to take this flower, and this flower is going to go on. We're going to adhere it, excuse me, we're going to adhere it onto this peacock piece, but we want it to kind of sit nicely like that. So, and you want to make sure that you don't adhere it to the base because you want the card to slide out. So I'm just going to put two little dimensionals. If you're using regular size, one dimensional, it will work fine. And that's just going to go on here like that. So it kind of nests right in where that notch is. And then it just pulls out like that and then slides in. We got a lot of dimension on there, so you do kind of have to lift the pocket up. But isn't that cute? So that is pocket number one. And then pocket number two, there's a few different things that you can do. So we're going to create another tag. So I've got a piece of white. I don't know what this is for. I'll figure that out later. Okay, so I've got a piece of white here. We're going to turn this into another tag and we're going to use this piece here. And I'm hoping that I have enough of this left because I have a feeling that I'm not going to get all the pieces that I want out of this. Oh no, I will. Okay. All right. So there's a narrow score line here. So we want to trim that off. We want to get rid of that. We don't want that tiny little sliver. So it's basically just the slivers that we won't end up using from our 12 by 12. Okay, and then there's a little bit of a larger sliver here, so we could trim that off. Okay, and then this piece measures 3 inches. So we want to rotate it so that it's the long edge across the top because it's a little bit wider than 3 inches. And we're going to cut three 1 inch strips. I needed to double check that. Three 1 inch strips. And actually, you know what? We need to trim it so it's 2 and 3/4. So we're going to trim it down to 2 and 3/4 because our tag is a little bit narrower and then cut into three 1 inch strips. One, two. This one we're going to flip over because we're going to use the peacock side, and three. All right. Okay. So we are going to ink blend around the edges of all of these pieces. So we're going to create another tag. So this one is going to be thank you. You could turn this into birthday. So depending on what you want to use this for, you can make it birthday, you can make it thank you can make it whatever you want. But we are going to turn it into a thank you. All right, so I'm going to add this to my card base. And actually, this is probably easier if I can use my grid mat. So let's slide this aside. And we're going to leave about 1/2 inch from the bottom, maybe a little bit less than 1/2 inch. Okay, I think that looks straight. And then we're going to take the thanks greeting from the stamp set. We're going to stamp it with Memento. So it says, thanks for being you. And we're going to stamp this. Now I should stamp this on my scrap and just make sure it's straight before okay. All right. Always nice to make sure that you've got it mounted straight or what you need to line it up with. I'm gonna go on there like that. Okay, and then we're gonna add this piece above the greeting. Like that. And then we're going to add this piece, floral side up, just above here. Okay, we can turn this into a tag. So again, just like I did the last one, so trim off the corner and then use that as a guide. You can also use the tag that you just cut. You could use that as a guide and just cut it the same way. Okay, and then we need to do ink blending around this, around our white bit. Okay, I'm going to punch a hole, pull back my 1/8 inch circle punch, and then another piece of that string. So this string will go a long way when you separate it. You'll be able to get lots and lots out of it. This time, what did I do? Okay, it looks like I did do the same thing. So I kind of folded it in half, pinch the fold, pull it through, and then separate the two so that you've got two loops. And then you're going to feed all of these ends through those two loops and pull, and then just trim this loop that you end up with. All right, and then we're going to bring in this larger leaf. Now this, you do need to be a little bit more mindful. So we are going to position it kind of like that so that the whole thing is on here. I did not do that the first time. I ended up having to trim some of my leaves off. And you can add as much glue as you'd like. I prefer to have some of my leaves kind of off the page like this and not all stuck down. Okay. Now, at this point, you can leave this like this, or you can add another bow using the twine. However, if you add another bow using the twine, then sometimes it will get caught when you stick this into the pocket. Okay, so that's just going to slide into that pocket. All right, there we go. Okay, so actually, I don't think I blended up here. Okay, so now our folio has some stuff in it. We can go ahead and add our belly band. First, let's do some ink blending on this belly band. Okay, and we didn't do any ink blending on this. Maybe we'll give it a shot, even if it's just on the bottom layer. Might be tricky to do. Let's see. I think we're getting the top layer. There we go. Okay. All right. Set that aside. I think we can close this up for now. I still have one more thing that I want to show you with the leftover pieces, but we're going to create our belly band here first. Okay, so what I like to do, because this has some thickness to it, you can just wrap it around. Actually, and you know what? That's what we're going to do. We're just going to wrap it around loosely. You don't want it too tight. And you can kind of pinch. And then what I do is I will add a little bit of adhesive here and then a little bit of adhesive on the end. And I'm purposely having the fold or the joint in the front because then I can cover it with my focal point. Okay, so now you just want to make sure that it slides nicely. You can adjust if needed. Yeah, that's a little bit looser. That's better. Okay, because we can still stuff this more full, right? All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to position this here so that I know how far to add adhesive. And I'm going to be pretty generous with this adhesive just because it's going to be kind of moved around quite a bit and you don't want it to fall apart. Okay, so that's going to go on there like that. We'll just hold it in place. Let that glue set. Isn't that pretty? So pretty. I love it. Fun little folio. All right. That should be good. All right, so we're going to set that aside because we still have this little piece of DSP left. So what we're going to do is we're going to die cut a circle. Um, and I'm going to use my stylish shapes. You can also punch a circle if you don't have dies. I'm going to do this second largest from the stylish shape circles, which is about 2 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so I'm going to be off camera for just a second while I go die cut this. All right. And okay, here we go. Yes, Ronnie, that is a great idea. This would make a great wedding gift. You could tuck a little gift card in. You could add photos in here as well, which would be really nice. All right. Yeah, a wedding gift. That would be fabulous. That's a fabulous idea. Okay, we're gonna do some more ink blending because we are going to make one more little insert for this, because I want to show you another idea. And this time we're going to make a little 3 by 3 card. So I have a 3 by 3 or 3 by 6 piece of white cardstock that has has been scored at 3 inches. And I'm just going to fold that in half. We'll use our blending brush and blend around the edges. Um, yeah, I'm not going to bother doing the back. Okay, and we've got this. We're going to add our circle. That's just going to go right in the center. So then this and these pieces are the only pieces that are left. So of course you could actually we could take this piece and add a strip across. We'll do that. We'll add that on the center. So it's just these pieces that are left. Um, so I'm just going to toss those. Okay, let's add this to the inside. And for this, I'm going to stamp happy birthday. So there is a birthday greeting in the stamp set that we're using. We're using, for those of you who arrived late, we are using the Charming Day bundle from the online exclusive section of the Stampin' Up! Website. But you can use anything. This is a great project to use up some of your pattern paper. You could whip these up. These would be great to create at Christmas time. They are so quick and easy. You could tuck a gift card in there, a little treat. Okay, so we've got that. And then we are going to use this leaf that we die cut. And then, like I said, I had stamped happy birthday just with Memento ink. I went ahead and fussy cut it. We're going to take some more of that pink, petal pink trim that we pulled apart, just tying a bow. And then we're going to add our ribbon on, or sorry, our leaf on first. Add a little bit of glue to the back of that. This is going to go on here like that. We'll add a little dot on top of that. We can probably trim the ends of these. It's a little long. That's going to go in there. And then we'll use some dimensionals to pop up our greeting. So we've used our entire sheet of 12 by 12 paper. I'm not sure what I must have forgotten to put this somewhere. I don't know where that was intended to go. All right. Add this on here like that. And then we're going to bring in some of those gems and we'll add a couple of these. Okay. So now let me share. All right, so we've got a birthday card and we've got a folio that we had initially made as a thank you. So we've got the belly band that will just slide off. Now, if you look at this, you'll see that it's got a narrower spine here and a thicker spine here. And the reason that is because as you fill it fuller, this needs to wrap around. So right now it's not super full, but I'm going to share another idea where it makes it a little bit more full. Okay, and it's helpful to have that extra width on the spine. All right, so here we've got happy birthday. Well, this gift card says happy birthday, but it could be thank you. Or what you could do is you could take this out. So there we've got a tag. You could take that tag out. You could add in some page flags. You tuck in some page flags. You could tuck in a bookmark. I actually don't think both. This bookmark is a little thick. I don't think this will fit in with the page. Oh, it might. Yeah, it will fit in there with the page flags. And then, so you've got a gift card. When we undo this, you can write a message here, and then you can also tuck this in here as well. So it will all fit and then close up nicely. We'll just wrap this around, close that, and then that slides around like that. And then our belly band, hopefully it's not too thick for this belly band. That bookmark is quite thick, but you could make a bookmark and it wouldn't be that thin or that thick. I think it might be just a smidge too thick. Yeah. If I didn't have the page flags in, I think it would fit. We'll just take the bookmark out so you can see. But that would be a perfect little gift for a reader, don't you think? Okay, let's make sure we've got this going the right way. Okay, we got this off without a problem. It was loose. There we go. There we go. Okay. All right. So there is an idea there that you can do. Here is the first one that I created. So we've got our tag or a gift card in there. And then that just slides in there. We've got that. We've got some page flags. You could even tuck the thanks card in. Like even though if we turn this into a birthday card, you could still tuck all these extras in because it's like extra gifts. So they can turn around and use those extra things. You could fill these pockets with tags if you wanted to. You could do an assortment of gift cards if you wanted to. If you wanted to give like, I know we like to give gift cards to our kids, and so we could do an assortment. My son loves to get food gift cards so that he doesn't have to make food to take when he goes to school. So we can do a bunch of different gift cards. So there we go. And then here is another one that I created. This one I did a little bit different. So you can see here, I made some slight modifications. So this one I plan on using inside of a junk journal that I've been making. And so I didn't want as much thickness. I knew I wouldn't need as much thickness. So the only difference that I did, I made one slight modification in the scoring line. So if you don't want to tuck it full of stuff, I will have a photo of this on my blog. But what I did was I reduced this. So I scored it at 1 3/8 and 1.5. So it's an eighth of an inch here rather than a quarter of an inch. So that was the only modifications that I made. Everything else is exactly the same. And that slight modification just allowed this to be a little bit flatter. And then the other thing that I did, instead of having a belly band that wrapped around, I just have this flap that tucks underneath. I haven't added anything on the inside of this yet. So, and then this will just lift up and that tucks underneath, just like that. So that's another way that you can close it if you don't want to do a belly band. All right. So I will have photos of this and the alternates. Well, this and I guess a photo of this as well. And the score lines up in today's blog post a little bit later this afternoon. I have a full supply list included in the description below. If there's anything that you would like to order and live in Canada, I would love for you to shop from me. But thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a fabulous day and happy August 1st. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.